Right now there is an absolute explosion of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth news. Just the other night, the embargo for the previews has lifted, and a ton of new footage and information is coming out every single second. And today we got a ton of news, including news on Vincent and Sid that is going to upset a ton of you. That said, it is certainly not all bad news today, and in fact it is mostly good news. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button and help us on the road to 100k. We have an interview with IGN that has a ton of brand new information. It's actually really hilarious the way this interview starts off, with IGN saying, to start off with, I actually didn't know Nomura-san was going to be here, but I wanted to ask, how involved are you on the project and what are you working on day to day? And Nomura says, to put it simply, my involvement is, not too different from Remake. It's just like, hey man, I show up, I do the thing. Then they asked about the introduction of party members with IGN saying, so from the preview session, it was very clear that although the path is familiar, there are slight changes. For example, the way that Yuffie is introduced to the party. Can we expect to see more moments like this that subvert the expectations of the players who know the past story? Kitase. So to comment on the sort of differences from the original work, one point being that the order of certain events of the storyline may differ from the original. Some may appear or some way than what happens in the original. But overall, Rebirth will tell the story to the Forgotten Capital sequence, and overall follow the original story. But as far as how characters join the party, like with Yuffie as you mentioned, has been reimagined in a way that's sort of better suited for a modern audience. Furthermore, as you know, within the original Final Fantasy VII, the character Zack Fair is one that doesn't appear as much in the original title. However, we see at the end of Remake that he has appeared, which, is quite different from the original title. And as for Rebirth, there'll be a new episode with Zack that will contain even more of him than Remake. I'm not able to say much more than this, as I'd like for players to play and experience this with it in their own hands. So there you have it, officially confirmed, we are going to be playing as Zack in Rebirth. This is something that I've anticipated since the very beginning of the Remake project, but something that I definitely saw coming after the ending of Remake. Whatever is going on in Zack's other timeline will be playing through that, and it will somehow be important to the brand new overarching story. The interview then continues, as you make these changes, I feel like it walks a fine line between fans who want to see a faithful retelling versus the new changes and new story that you're telling. So how do you balance making those changes, and how much of the story is focused on subverting expectations for fans of the original, as opposed to a faithful retelling? Kitase. I do believe that with Remake as well, we were able to tell the story and express ourselves in a new way that doesn't stray or defy the expectations of those who are fans of the original title. And so, in terms of, the question of balance, I do believe that a good balance between the two was maintained for Rebirth as well. That said, while the story we follow is quite faithful to the original, as you've seen in the demo as well, part 1 with the story of Cloud and Sephiroth and their great journey at Mount Nebel, you see that it is greatly kind of enhanced and improved upon the original, whereas there is sort of a limitation based on the technology of that time, whereas now we just have this much more enhanced immersive experience with the voice acting that just adds another layer to these characters, the stunning visuals, and the acting of the characters that just shows much more. So we have this sort of same episode that is being retold and invokes a new feeling, like a new, deeper feeling within players. A very interesting statement. Rebirth aspires to have the same balance as Remake, with brand new and remade nostalgic moments. That being said, there is only a certain extent to which I can really trust statements like this. They're never gonna outright say, yeah, there's gonna be a ton of subversion in this. If you say it, then it wouldn't be subversion. So regardless of if this is going to stay faithful, or if it's not going to stay faithful, of course in these interviews they're going to say this. However, I do believe them in the sense that yes, the pivotal story moments that you all know and love will be there. But what I believe is that the context behind a lot of these moments will be rather different. IGN then says, quote, so you mentioned that Zack has his own episode in Rebirth. What about any other characters from Crisis Core? Is there any world where Genesis returns to the Final Fantasy Fantasy VII Remake games, Nomura. So any characters beyond what is shown in the trailer, we're unable to speak on. Sorry guys, no Genesis confirmation quite yet, and for those who don't want him in the game, you can breathe a sigh of relief, at least for now. Now we have the news that is going to crush you guys. In the trailer today, we saw a glimpse of Vincent popping out and saying hello. Will he be playable in this game, or is he just a companion? Hamaguchi. In terms of whether or not Vincent will be a playable character, he'll be more of an accompanying character to the party in terms of Rebirth, so this will be similar to how Red 13 was in Remake. So yes, while Vincent will be a guest party member in this game, you will not be able to play as him. Not until Final Fantasy VII Remind, or whatever they call the third part. Now let's talk about the most hype thing in the entire Rebirth trailer. Yes guys, I am talking about Chocobos. With the interview continuing with, I saw some colored Chocobos in the trailer today, and I know that they were being used for traversal and everything, but will Chocobo breeding be back in Remake as it was in the original FF7? And if so, have there been any major changes or additions to the Chocobo system? Hamaguchi. So to speak upon the Chocobo's role in Rebirth, and how they'll be utilized by the players within this game, it will be mainly sort of for world exploration, and by sort of using the Chocobo or riding the Chocobo, they'll be able to, you know, climb cliffs and sort of reach new areas that are, you know, not accessible as just by walking. So they'll be able to explore deeper as you've seen in the trailer. And as you may remember from the original title, one could acquire a Chocobo by seeking that Chocobo footprint, which was sort of the system in the original. And this time around, we do have a sort of similar but enhanced new Chocobo capturing feature that players can use to acquire the Chocobo, that they could then use for the world map traversal and exploration. And in terms of the breeding system that you mentioned, something like that does not exist in Rebirth. However, for the Rebirth Chocobos, each of them has their own unique name, and they're able to enter the Gold Saucer races. There's also equipment that is specifically designed for Chocobos to equip that will enhance their status, and it will affect their performance in the Chocobo races. So for anyone hoping to breed Chocobos in this game like they've done in the original, unfortunately Chocobo breeding is not going to be in Rebirth. IGN then continues, one final Chocobo question. How comfortable do you think Red 13 is while riding a Chocobo? He looked a little uncomfortable and might have some back problems from the way he's hunched over. Hamaguchi, yes, thank you for this very great question. You know, as noted, Red 13 and how he will ride a Chocobo was very hotly talked about amongst the dev staff. It was very discussed among ourselves, and we kind of settled upon Nomura-san's idea of how he should be riding the Chocobo. And we really think that this combines both the comical elements alongside the serious plotline that really represents Final Fantasy VII series. And I'm really happy to see that this was really picked up in the trailer as well. Guys, I lied to you. There is one thing more important than Chocobos, and that is the Segway. Speaking of moments from the trailer that are quite funny, we saw Cloud riding a Segway in today's trailer. I have to ask, where did that come from? And at what point in the game will he be riding a Segway? I didn't know there were Segways in the Final Fantasy VII universe. Hamaguchi, yes. Cloud riding a Segway in the trailer is also creating quite a buzz in Japan as well. And so for this, we were thinking of, while Cloud is visiting various locations throughout Rebirth, you know, Costa del Sol is the sort of resort town. So instead of walking and using a traditional mode of getting around this town, we were thinking to ourselves, is there a sort of more fun, exciting way for Cloud and the party to kind of traverse and get around Costa del Sol? And when thinking about this wheel, hand-controlled transportation device, sort of this Segway-like machine came to mind, and we're really happy this is being noticed globally as well as in Japan. The Segway is cool. I love it. These are the types of additions that are always welcome in a game like this. It's the type of silly thing that you can find in Final Fantasy VII, and I really like it. The next two questions are really heavy-hitting, with the last question being something that everyone thought was going to happen, but is actually not going to happen in the way that people have been thinking, and seems to confirm something that I was right about. But before we get there, let's start with the first one. So to finish up, do you have any clues for why this game is called Rebirth? So for this, with the last title, Remake, we were just thinking of the concept of recreating or reimagining. And so Remake was the the title that we chose. And sort of in line with this, Rebirth was thought of as the next iteration that also kind of encapsulates the sentiment of reimagining or recreating. With that in mind, should we expect to see the Whispers of Fate again throughout Rebirth? Hamaguchi. So as you know, with Remake as well, Whispers are these beings that arrive at these pivotal points within the story. And you know, we aren't quite yet announcing whether they will be gracing their presence within Rebirth as well. So this is something we'd like users to stay tuned for. While saying that he couldn't confirm it, he also simultaneously seemed to confirm that the Whispers will indeed be in Rebirth in some form. This is something that's been hotly debated. People would always say, well, if you didn't like the Whispers, good thing we defeated them and they won't be part of Rebirth. I am certain they won't be appearing as frequently as they did in Remake. However, it would seem that we have not gotten rid of the Whispers quite entirely, and you can expect them to appear in some way, shape, or form. For anyone paying attention to the original game, you'd notice that when we defeated the Whispers, allegedly, it's not that they actually vanished or anything. They were absorbed in the Sephiroth's wing. It's made clear whenever you go back and watch this cutscene. Thus, it had always seemed to me that we didn't actually defeat the Arbiters, at least not in the sense that they're gone for good. We just allowed Sephiroth to take complete control of them, allowing him to do whatever the hell's going on now. So if you were looking forward to a whisperless Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the ghosts aren't going anywhere, and that makes perfect sense. They were built up to for a reason. If you want a great preview of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, breaking down the new demo in, be sure to click the video on the screen from Schrodinger's Baby Seal. Shout out to patron Alex Thomas and the rest of the Ultima community.